Hi, welcome to A Gray Barn Rising. I'm so glad you could join us this evening. I'm sitting here, of course, with Bootsy Beagle, the best hound dog in the world. And I'm reading the poetry this evening of the incredible Spanish poet Federico García Lorca. Federico García Lorca lived from 1898 to 1936 when he was tragically killed by Franco during the Spanish Civil War. He was an incredible poet. I've mentioned him in some other episodes, in fact. And he was just an incredible poet of great psychological, primordial depth, often drawing on surrealist imagery, vast juxtapositions, very startling imagery, some of which I'm going to share with you this evening. Lorca's work is known for its rapid associations and for its hallucinatory landscapes, particularly in his great work, Poet in New York. Now, Poet in New York, he wrote after he spent some time in New York City, and it was considered among Lorca critics an aberration when he first wrote it. It was nothing like his earlier books. I tend to think it was not really an aberration, but an incredible response to a new environment and a development of consciousness in some really vital ways. So I would like to share a couple of poems from Poet in New York and another poem that's just as surreal. So I'd like to begin with a Robert Bly translation from Leaping Poetry, an idea with poems and translations. This poem that I'm going to read has been translated by other translators as well, but I really prefer this particular translation of this poem. And it's entitled Landscape with Two Graves and an Assyrian Hound. And I love the way the dead actually speak in this poem. Friend, get up so you can hear the Assyrian hound howling. The three nymphs of Cancer are up and dancing, my son. They brought along mountains of red sealing wax and some rough sheets that Cancer slept on last night. The neck of the horse had an eye, and the moon was up in a sky so cold she had to rip up her own mound of Venus and drown the ancient cemeteries in blood and ashes. Friend, wake up, for the hills are still not breathing, and the grass in my heart has gone off somewhere. It does not matter if you are full of seawater. I loved a child for a long time who had a tiny feather on his tongue, and we lived 100 years inside a knife. Wake up, say nothing, listen, sit up a little. The howling is a long and purple tongue, leaving behind ants of terror and lilies that make you drunk. It's coming now near your stone. Don't stretch out your roots. Nearer, it's moaning. Do not cry in your sleep, my friend. My friend, get up so you can hear the Assyrian hound howling. What a strange and intense poem, and that is, even though I read from Leaping Poetry, that is part of Lorca's book, Poet in New York. I'd like to read another poem from Poet in New York, but this from a Greg Simon and Stephen F. White translation in this book, Poet in New York, which was translated by, as I said, Greg Simon and Stephen White. This is entitled Sleepless City, Brooklyn Bridge Nocturne. Out in the sky, no one sleeps. No one sleeps. Lunar creatures sniff and circle the dwellings. Live iguanas will come to bite the men who don't dream. And the broken-hearted fugitive will meet on street corners an incredible crocodile resting beneath the tender protest of the stars. Out in the world, no one sleeps. No one. No one. No one sleeps. There is a corpse in the farthest graveyard complaining for 3 years because of an arid landscape in his knee. And a boy who was buried this morning cried so much they had to call the dogs to quiet him. Life is no dream. Watch out. Watch out. Watch out. We fall downstairs and eat the moist earth, or we climb to the snow's edge with the choir of dead dahlias. But there is no oblivion, no dream. Raw flesh, kisses tie mouths in a tangle of new veins, and those who are hurt will hurt without rest, and those who are frightened by death will carry it on their shoulders. One day, horses will live in the taverns, and furious ants will attack the yellow skies that take refuge in the eyes of cattle. Another day will witness the resurrection of dried butterflies, and still walking in a landscape of gray sponges and silent ships, we'll see our ring shine and roses spill from our tongues. Watch out, watch out, watch out. Those still marked by claws and cloudburst, that boy who cries because he doesn't know about the invention of bridges, or that corpse that has nothing more than its head and one shoe. They all must be led to the wall where iguanas and serpents wait, where the bear's teeth wait, where the mummified hand of a child waits, and the camel's fur bristles with a violent blue chill. Out in the sky, no one sleeps. No one. No one. No one sleeps. But if someone closes his eyes, whip him, my children. Whip him. Let there be a panorama of open eyes and bitter, inflamed wounds. Out in the world, no one sleeps. No one. No one. I've said it before. No one sleeps. But at night, if someone has too much moss on his temples, open the trapdoors so he can see in moonlight the fake goblets, the venom, and the skull of the theaters. Very intense poem. One of the things Lorca does is when he accesses the unconscious, he taps into these primordial creatures and this great animal energy, and often even reptilian energy, as with the iguanas. This very incredible poem, an incredible movement of his psyche. That's also from a poet in New York. You hear a lot of death imagery in Lorca's work, and I would refer people to one of the most incredible essays on poetics that I've ever encountered, and that's his great essay called Theory and Function of the Duende. And he describes that element of the duende, that moment where we are haunted by death, and we are haunted by, as he says, the idea that we could suddenly be devoured by ants at any moment, or that an arsenic lobster might fall from the sky and clobber us at any moment. I won't do justice to even unpacking the concept of the duende, but it is that, in part, that element where death is always with us, and the consciousness of death is always with us, and knowing that brings a great emotion and a great depth to our psyche. So these poems of Lorca's that speak of death are not negative. They are there to, in many ways, utilize that energy and transform that energy into something generative and something creative. I want to close with another poem from Leaping Poetry, and this is entitled Little Infinite Poem. This poem is not in Poet in New York, but this is a poem that moves in very similar ways. And again, it's entitled Little Infinite Poem. To take the wrong road is to arrive at the snow. And to arrive at the snow is to get down on all fours for 20 centuries and eat the grasses of the cemeteries. To take the wrong road is to arrive at woman. Woman who isn't afraid of light. Woman who kills 2 roosters in 1 second. Light which isn't afraid of roosters, and roosters who don't know how to sing on top of the snow. But if the snow took the wrong heart, the southern wind could very well arrive. And since the air cares nothing for groans, we will have to get down on all fours again and eat the grasses of the cemeteries. I saw 2 mournful wheat heads made of wax, burying a countryside of volcanoes. And I saw 2 insane little boys who wept as they leaned on a murderer's eyeballs. But 2, that is not a number. All it is an agony and its shadow. It's only the guitar where love feels its discouragement. It's only the demonstration of something else's infinity. A castle raised around a dead man, and the scourging of the new resurrection that will never end. Dead people hate the number 2, but the number 2 makes women drop off to sleep. And since women are afraid of light, light shudders when it has to face the roosters. And since all roosters know is how to fly over the snow, we will have to get down on all fours and eat the grasses of the cemeteries forever. That's a poem translated by Robert Bly, and again that's from Leaping Poetry. This is just a small sampling of the work of Federico García Lorca, a poet who has had such a monumental impact not only on Spanish poetry and Spanish poetry that has come in the wake of his work, but also on world poetry and even American poetry, even North American poetry. So I would encourage you to seek out the work of Lorca, and not only the wilder poems, but some of his tamer poems as well. They're very, very beautiful and equally intense. Thank you so much for joining us for A Great Barn Rising.